Aloha and welcome to Lucy's Paradise Podcast. Today is Election Day. Obviously, when this airs, the election will already be passed. Election Day will already be over. And all I really want to say about it is to just go out and vote. That's pretty much it. Today's episode is a solo episode. We're going to go ahead and recap some of the episodes that we already had recently. And we actually had a guest on like the last 5 episodes. So that's been really awesome. Episode 34, we had John Gritzko on. He's a good friend of mine that was living here in Hawaii. He moved here to Island and he was a musician, producer, and then ended up changing his path and moving to Australia. He's doing really good out in Australia. He seems to be having such a blast and I miss him already. So hopefully when he comes and visits in December, we can have him on again and kind of get a little update of how life in Australia has been for him. That was a really fun episode. He was a little out of it for sure, but John is always a delight to have, so it was really cool to see him. Episode 35, I had Nathaniel on. He is a local artist here. He gained a lot of his love for painting and airbrushing, and he also does tattooing. And he learned most of that. If you watch the episode, he talked about how his dad introduced it to him when he was younger. And then he ended up in Rikers Island prison in New York. And that's when he realized he could like make money off of his painting. So I thought that was really interesting. Really, really interesting story. Awesome to see someone transform from, a negative situation and turn it around and transform it into something positive. Now he lives out here in Hawaii and he does his art full time. So he's really like that genuine success story, right? So it was really awesome to see him. He does a lot of painting and teaching with youth in the community. And he does a whole bunch of like painting classes and stuff too. So I'm looking forward to being able to attend one of his classes. And he inspired me that day. I actually like painted a painting that day after I hung out with him. So it was really neat. I'll probably post it at some point later. Episode 36, we had Josh Snow, local boxer Josh Snow back on, and we kind of got an update from him. Poor guy's been a little bit sick, so I'm looking forward to seeing him box in the near future, but obviously he's been sick, so focusing on his health there. In that episode, we also got a prison phone call from Joe Exotic. I was able to talk to Joe Exotic for about 15 minutes. I don't know about that whole story. I go back and forth on it so much. I think the bottom line is if the government wants to target you, they will. I think that's a given. But also, I'm sure there are a few things he probably did that were illegal. I don't know that I believe that he put a hit out for Carol Baskin. I don't know if I believe that part of it. But it's a very interesting episode. I'm stoked that we actually got to talk to him. And it was weird hearing him like say my name because I remember during COVID, one of my best friends and I were like, yeah, let's binge watch Tiger King. And so we just sat there and the whole day we watched every single episode. So it was very surreal to actually have a real conversation with him. And I haven't really posted a ton of clips yet, but I will be doing that in the next few days. So you guys look out for that. That's still an interesting episode. He said some random shit about Putin and it was funny. Episode 37, a little bit more involving the Hawaii community. I interviewed the general manager of Waikele. Waikele is a community in between like Waipahu and Mililani. It's one of the safest communities that we have here in Hawaii. And a good friend of mine, Malcolm Ching, is actually the general manager of the community. So we actually got to pick his brain, talk about the things that have been successful in creating and maintaining the community of Waikele. So that episode was really interesting and a lot more Hawaii focused. So I'm glad that I was able to bring that back to Hawaii after having an episode with Joe Exotic. Episode 38, we had Justin, which was our last episode recently. And Justin Conant's been my photographer friend for, I don't even know how many years now. We've met each other in Los Angeles. He lives out here now. I was living out here now. So really funny the way that works out. But he ended up coming on the podcast and we finally did our episode after about 4 to 5 months of extensive research on the story of Dalen Pua, who is the 17, 18-year-olds from the Big Island who went missing, attempting to get to the haiku stairs, but pretty sure he went missing before making it to the stairs in Moanalua Valley. After we shot that episode, Justin texted me and said, wait a second, we got it wrong. I think I know where he was. And we discovered that one of the photos that I have from hiking in that area in the Moanalua Valley is identical to one of the photos that he took before he went missing that he uploaded to his Facebook. So that was really creepy, and just so ironic. I ended up doing that hike in that area in 2020, and I had no idea that that was the same spot until Justin and I figured it out after shooting that episode. So at some point we may do a part 2 episode, because we want to get back out there and actually hike it and do some more research. With that though, it's rainy season. It just started again. Today is a great example. It just poured. So we're not going to be able to do that hike most likely until after all of the rain and stuff subsides, because then, clearly the hike's still going to be extra dangerous. So we'll have to pause on that, but that is our next goal and our next feat. And those are our updates. So we're going to go to Grant's going to basically ask me some questions going down the line, and I guess I'll have to answer them. So
I guess so. All right. Question 1. What inspired you to start a Hawaii-centered podcast?
I think the biggest thing is that I'm born and raised in Hawaii, and there wasn't a lot of podcasts from Hawaii. So I think that I saw a need, and some of the other podcasts that exist here was very different from what I wanted to do. And yeah, I couldn't imagine doing a podcast. I mean, I guess I could, but I like the idea of being able to do something that can help the community in some way. So
nice. Question 2. How has growing up in Hawaii shaped the topics and stories you want to share on your podcast?
I mean, it shapes it. I mean, that's the most important thing. It absolutely shapes it, because growing up in Hawaii is such a unique experience. The things that we've dealt with and worried about or whatever as kids and growing up here is just completely different from other places, even in the United States. And you don't really realize that until you visit other places. Luckily, I've been fortunate enough to travel around the Mediterranean. I lived in Los Angeles. I lived in the Bay Area, and making friends in other states, I got to kind of pick their brain on what was it like for you growing up? I mean, I had a friend that basically grew up in San Francisco. So it was just really interesting, to compare that. But yeah, it shapes everything, because I want majority of the podcast to be about people that are here in Hawaii, and the community of Hawaii is what makes Hawaii Hawaii.
What do you hope listeners take away from each episode?
The biggest thing is I hope you question things. So I've said that I think more than once already on the podcast. But that's a big thing. I want people to take that away. Obviously, if you learn something from me too, that's great. Or if you learn something about the community, that's great. Or if I have somebody on that has an inspiring story and that inspires you, that's amazing. That's kind of the point too. But question things. Don't take everything you hear and read and see for face value. So yeah, question everything.
These were made by ChatGPT, right? The questions.
Why are they horrible?
Well, I mean, they're no. I'm just.
Well, I think number 6 is not correct.
Okay. All right. Well, question 4.
Feel free to skip whichever ones if it sounds weird.
Okay. You recently hosted an artist. What was the most surprising insight they shared about the art scene in Hawaii?
I guess he compared what he wanted to do. He wanted to be now Wyland is like a very famous artist here in Hawaii that specifically paints whales and like huge whales and stuff. He wants to be the Wyland of turtles. And I thought that was interesting that I've never thought of art or like I've never thought about how like what the next big artist here would be. So I thought that was interesting. And I think there's totally a place for that. And I'm excited to see turtles everywhere.
Okay. I forgot if you already answered this, but it says, how was your experience interviewing Joey Exotic? And what was it like to bring him into the conversation within the context of Hawaii?
Well, we don't really talk about Hawaii specifically, besides the fact that I'm from here and have heard about his story, being on an island. And that's kind of the point, right? That's what is great. We're connected, thank God, with the internet and stuff. And I think that more and more as the internet has gotten popular, Hawaii's a lot more on the map because we can post things and people see things online and stuff like that. So the fact that I even saw his TV show during COVID on Netflix, right, that's interesting. But he's a character. Yeah, he's just a character, I feel like I could just, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, he's just a character, man. I feel like in real life, I could probably just like eat popcorn and just watch this dude like just be alive, and he's just hilarious.
Just be alive.
Yeah, he's funny.
Okay, I'm gonna skip number 6.
Okay, skip 6.
Okay, why did you choose to cover the topic of Dylan, and how has the recent response been from listeners for that episode? Did that episode air already?
It didn't air, but I did post a clip, and his cousin commented the clip and tagged his brothers on it. I did kind of talk to his brother, who like crazily looks like him. That's not even a word, but it's creepy. He eerily, that's the word I was looking for. Looks like him. I think the response is good. I think it's okay. I mean, our mission with that was to really just debunk weird stories that were created just off the hype, because if you do that hike, you don't know about the terrain and that hike unless you are standing there doing the hike. So it's frustrating to see videos on YouTube of people talking about it when they've never even been to this island, let alone done the hike. So I think from Justin and my perspective, we were a little frustrated with all these wild stories going around, and we kind of, I mean, it's just a very black and white story. Somebody went hiking by themselves and went missing. It's really simple. Everything else, maybe there's a little more. Maybe when he fell, there's something, he got injured, which is why, you can't crawl out of there. And with that terrain, if you got injured, you're not crawling anywhere, man. You're probably just sitting there, So, yeah, it's something that we're just super passionate about. I mean, and we're truth seekers, Justin and I. So that's why I wanted to cover it, and I'm glad that we did, and I'm sure there's more to unfold with it. So I'm excited about it, and I'm glad that like the family and everything is taking it and seeing that we're trying to be as respectful as possible with it, because it is a tragic story too, so.
Okay. You've hosted guests from various backgrounds. How do you decide who will resonate best with your audience?
Well, I don't think that's really for me to decide, like who's going to resonate best, because like we all have like a different human experience. So I just think that if there's one or two things about a guest that's interesting, then I feel like we can go off of there. And a lot of the times I've like interviewed guests and we've had like one thing in mind, and then so much more has like come from that. So it's been interesting. Like Harold, I've known Harold for forever, but I had no idea that he was gonna like kind of talk about some of the things that he's talked about, because even though I've known him for so long, I mean, obviously there's experiences and stories that he's been through that I don't know about, you know what I mean? Because I don't know every single thing about like his life, you know what I mean? So it was really interesting. He got like really surprisingly deep on one of the episodes, and I was like kind of shocked. Like I was not really expecting that, but I think the biggest thing is I like to find guests that are like willing to be open, because it's not easy to be on a podcast, but it's not easy to be on a podcast with me, because I'm going to pull out like all of that information from you, and you can't really be disingenuous like being interviewed by me, because I'm going to ask you the stuff that is probably harder. I mean, there is a certain amount of layout that we do for the podcast, because obviously I don't want you to get on here and I'm not going to ask you something you don't want to talk about, right? Like I have the basic respect or whatever for my guests. So obviously there are topics that could totally be offline, but I do love and appreciate the guests that are just open books and down to talk about anything. And yeah, the more open you are, I guess, the more likely you are to come on.
Nice. How do you balance keeping conversations Hawaii focused while also bringing in unique perspectives from guests outside of the island?
The easiest thing is that most people live here now. So when you talk about the fact that you live here now, there's kind of a reason for that. You know, a lot of people that are not born and raised here, they come here and they fall in love with the island. They fall in love with the people, they fall in love with the culture. And so that in itself ties us all together. It makes me sad when I see people that are born and raised in Hawaii that no longer have that love for it in that way. And I understand not wanting to live here, but when they talk so bad about it, because there are good and bad in every place, but yeah, there's such a, Hawaii is just unique. It's very, very unique. So, but living here, living on island and being part of the current community is what ties us right now. So
Okay.
I think I answered that.
Yeah. Like I said, these questions are very oddly specific to Hawaii. So, are there any local figures or unsolved stories in Hawaii you hope to highlight in future episodes?
Well, besides the Dalen one again, my brother suggested doing more ghost story type stuff. Obviously, we already had an experience with that, which is why I think we paused on it. But because of Halloween and everything, he's like, oh yeah, you should do that. I'm open to that. I'm open to doing that again. Figures I would like to have. I'd love to have Keep It Aloha podcast guests. Kamaka Diaz, I'd love to have him on. That would be cool. And I think possibly when the new year hits, he'll come on. And I'd love to have Bretman Rock on. You know, I'll shout that in the universe and hope it happens. I'd love to have Miss K, his cousin, on. I'd love to have Princess May on. Just some prominent people. There's a whole bunch more that I probably just can't think of right now. Some musicians and stuff. Alani Silva, I should have her on. She's just so busy. Yeah, I mean, anyone, but yeah, those are my top, I would say.
What unique aspects of Hawaii culture or challenges do you think are misunderstood by those outside the islands?
Ooh. I don't know that it's misunderstood anymore. I think people kind of understand how expensive it is here. So I don't know that I can say that life here is misunderstood. I would just say the frustrations of local people might be misunderstood, because I don't think a lot of people come from a I hate foreigner perspective. I think they come from you're a foreigner and you got like a remote job here and then you can move here and live here and work remote. And it's almost like an opportunity, like a jealousy of opportunity or something. You know, that's more kind of what I find, more than just like a specific hate for a type of people. But I don't know. Our issues here are really, really unique. You know what I mean? Like the military and like travel nurses and like those are the people that make the most money here, and it's kind of wild. So, yeah.
Okay. How do you feel Hawaii's sense of community impacts the way you approach storytelling on your podcast?
Can you ask that one more time?
Okay, yeah, we can skip that. That one's a little weird. Let's skip it.
Okay, we'll skip it.
Okay, how has the podcast changed your own connection to Hawaiian culture and community?
I think it's helped. I get a lot of people that come up to me at the gym and they watch the podcast, and I think they watch it religiously because they're like, oh yeah, I watched this episode. I'm like, oh my God, the episode just came out. Like, you really watched it? But I appreciate it. I mean, I'm glad that people are hearing it and that it's making some sort of impact. And I think that brings me closer to the community, because community members can literally come up to me and start these conversations. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should have you on, or maybe I should talk about that. Or, and I do want to talk about things that are relevant to people, you know, and relevant to us, because we are all in the community. So, but I think it's a positive thing, hopefully.
Looking forward, what are some topics or guests you are excited to bring on the show? You kind of already asked that in the previous one, right?
Kind of already asked that
Yeah.
one. I guess Hazel Rose. She's an MMA fighter. I'm excited to bring her on.
Okay. How has the podcast grown or evolved since you started?
I think it's grown in very positive ways. I mean, the trajectory of subscribers and viewers and stuff like that is up and fine, and I don't want to super hyper focus on that too much, because I just want to focus on making the content and enjoying the process of doing that, which I have been. But yeah, that's been a positive. Everything going. I think also people's interest in wanting to be involved in the podcast has been positive, so I'm appreciative of that. And, you know, I'm always looking for interesting people. I'm always looking for guests and things like that. So I'm try to be as open book as possible when it comes to having different people on and different insights. I mean, if you even look at Keith and I have completely different views religiously. I mean, I'm God-fearing, God-loving type person. He was born and raised Mormon, and just completely strayed away from believing in God. Now, does that mean we can't be friends? No, but we had completely different viewpoints on that, and we were able to sit down and like discuss it. So I think that's important. You know, it's okay to think differently than somebody else. I think you gain a lot of knowledge. I mean, he listens to me and I listen to him, and you know, if I don't convince him to believe in God, that's okay. And if he doesn't convince me to not believe in God, that's okay. But we hear each other out and we have that respect, and we could have the conversation. And so that's probably my most favorite part. But I think I hope that's an emphasis. I hope people are noticing that I do have people on here that we challenge each other, you know, and that's okay. So.
Okay. Is there a dream guest you'd love to have on the podcast, whether it be local icon or somebody globally recognized?
Probably on Island, I would say Bretman Rock. Maybe The Rock, the actual Rock. I don't know if that's possible. I might have to email somebody. Globally, there's so many people globally I'd love to have on. Mike G, just because I was able to meet him the beginning of the year, and he's awesome. Allie Chapman, she's actress friend of mine lives in Los Angeles. Jeffrey King. Lots of people. Too many to count.
Okay. Lastly, what has been the most rewarding moment and of hosting this podcast so far?
The most rewarding is developing the new relationships with people. I think that is the most rewarding. I have, people that I meet and I don't really know, maybe I get along with them, or maybe we talk about a topic and we're like, oh yeah, you can come on the podcast. We should talk about that topic. That's so interesting. And I find them interesting, but I find out more and really that connection, I would say, with people that I've made involving the podcasts.
Yeah.
I'd say that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions ChatGPT came up with.
Okay.
What's been your latest muse in music? Like, what have you been listening to lately?
For music, well, I just actually finished a song with Kayristin. It's called Love Bomb. It's almost there. I would say it's about 90% done, maybe. And that's an EDM song, so I'm excited for that to come out. I don't know, what have I been listening to? Mostly, actually, I should look it up on my Spotify, because it's this like one playlist I have. It is on Spotify. It is my rap house remixes. So it's like EDM remixes of like house songs. And it's about an hour, 21-minute mix, and it's pretty good. So it has like David Guetta remixes, and so yeah, just like stuff that like pumps me up, that makes me want to like dance, and like I listen to that before I like go to work
Nice.
to get positive vibes.
What books have you been reading?
One of them's right over there. It's called Earthing. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Earthing.
So Earthing, yeah, that one's interesting. I kind of peruse. I read like multiple books at a time. That one, Earthing, is about the benefits of grounding yourself. And it's really interesting. It's really quite interesting. I like to read all kinds of stuff. So no limit, but that's one of the newest ones.
Nice.
You're looking around. You're like, what else can I ask you?
We're almost at the halfway mark. We're almost at 30 minutes.
Okay.
Do you wanna keep going?
Yeah, I'll probably say a couple more things
Okay.
about the recapping,
Okay.
and then we can end the episode. Yeah, super appreciative. By the way, I wanted to shout out everybody who's been a guest so far on the podcast. Super appreciative of you. That is why I ended up doing my little podcast party. Excited to plan and do one next year in the future. So look out for that. Obviously, everybody who's been a guest is invited to that. It's crazy to think that I started this podcast it was around January, right? That I started like
Think so,
around
yeah.
January-ish?
Yeah, about there.
Because my brother asked me that, and I was like, dang, I don't know. And I was like, no, I think it was January. So, I mean, just within a few short months, I feel like the momentum has been going. I was just featured in a podcast newsletter. They have about 50,000 subscribers or whatever to it. So that was really neat to see that email go out and be in that newsletter. And HPU is going to feature me in their college newsletter as well. So that's exciting. And then shout out to X1 Events. X1 Events is allowing me to come to the MMA fights on November 22nd and 23rd, which will be exciting. I'll be able to do interviews with the fighters, the pre and post fight interviews. So I'm super excited for that because I'm an MMA fan. And the last thing I want to mention is I watched the Max Holloway fight, and that was sad because he lost. But I love the video that he put out about how positive and humble he is. That was cool. So that was really cool to see. And the last thing I would like to mention is, if you guys want to do any interesting research, I would challenge you to watch the Joe Rogan podcast where he interviews Elon Musk. I think it's very interesting. And no matter what your viewpoints are about anything or about the government or about anything, I would just encourage you to watch it and check it out, because I found it very interesting. And I love things like that make me think. And I hope that you are reading books and or watching podcasts, listening to podcasts and things like that make you think. I'm always the type that, like, I'm never going to push my views on other people, and I don't believe in brainwashing. I like facts. I like what really happened. I'm a truth seeker. That's what I like. And then people can come up with their own conclusions based on the truth. But I do think that's interesting. I do think everybody should watch that, especially if you are a person that feels like they don't know anything about politics. Okay, you don't know anything? Do research, and that's one podcast I would ask you to watch, and just watch it and form your own opinion. But other than that, I appreciate you guys watching this episode of Lucy's Paradise podcast. And the last thing I'm going to shout out is Legion Athletics. If you want to get any supplements there, use my code LucyD for 20% off. And thank you so much for watching Lucy's Paradise podcast. Aloha.